Edwards Air Force Base, California. Edwards is the flight test center of the United States Air Force Air Research and Development Command. At the Flight Test Center is the fastest school in the world, the United States Air Force Flight Test School, from whose doors, upon graduation, come the men destined to push back the frontiers of aeronautical knowledge, the United States Air Force Flight Test Pilots. To find out how important this big little school is, let's see what it does for this pilot, who, by the way, is already a pretty good one. His name is Roy Jones, and he's come to join a new class that's just starting. He's 28 years old, married, and has 2 children. He has a degree in engineering and 2,300 hours flying time. Helen is typical of the wives of these students, and at this moment isn't too enthused about his becoming a test pilot. But Roy has no reservations. Here's a chance to put his knowledge of engineering to actual practice, to fly the latest aircraft, and to gain added skill as a pilot. And of course, there are some aspects of the new assignment that Helen immediately likes. For instance, the small, attractive homes on the base available to students and their families. They are unusually modern and up-to-date and provide every comfort for good living. During the next few days, Roy is busy with the details of moving on to a new base. Physical check. On Monday morning, Roy, you report to school with other members of your class and are ushered into the seminar room where the commandant of the school welcomes you. After making you feel at home and telling you to consider yourselves members of the base, he makes one point very clear. All hairy tests are made by the airplane manufacturer's test pilot, not by you. The United States Air Force isn't looking for daredevil, hot rock pilots, and any student who makes an unauthorized maneuver won't be around the school very long. He then briefs you as to your duties and responsibilities. And when he outlines some of the advanced techniques, problems, and tests the course will involve, you begin to realize the great importance of test flying. After your briefing, you and your classmates start your tour of the base facilities. You visit, among other places, the flight line, and are shown current projects being flown and tested by recent graduates of the school. For instance, after your tour, you're issued your flight gear, test books, drafting equipment, and classroom supplies. You are also given the pilot operating handbooks, the -1s, for each of the various types of airplanes you'll be flying for the next 6 months. You find yourself attending your first class. You are told the course is divided into 2 parts. Performance first, then stability and control, each part taking 3 months. In performance, your first lesson is how to calibrate the altimeter and airspeed instruments. The purpose of this test is to determine the position error in the aircraft's pitot-static system so that corrections can be made to data obtained from this system. There are several ways to do this, and one of them is by determining your height from the ground by flying past the control tower. You never knew this before, but wait. Your instructor is going to prove this to you along with a lot of other interesting things. He tells you the flight test technique for this particular test. The airspeed for the jet airplanes will vary on each pass by the tower at 40-knot increments from 150 to 500 knots. You will record all data on your knee pad. The Odolite readings will be recorded by an assistant in the tower. You will be given a test data card for the tower flyby and a schematic diagram of the traffic pattern. Early the next morning, your instructor takes you up to check you out on the test. And that afternoon, after school, you reduce your data further. The plots thus obtained are your calibrations and will be used to correct your airspeed readings for the remainder of the course. It's challenging work, isn't it, Roy? But you've got to be right, because someday the data you will be compiling will appear in the back of a pilot's handbook, the -1. Your information will cover our latest and newest aircraft and will be vitally important to the pilots who fly them. You often wondered who compiled all that data, didn't you? Well, now you know. You're in good spirits, aren't you, Roy? You've almost finished the course, and graduation day isn't too far off. You're finally getting the big picture of test flying, and you can hardly wait to graduate and get your first job in this new career. But as you start down the hall to the locker room, the commandant's secretary stops you. She tells you that you have an appointment with the commandant tomorrow morning at 0800. That night, you mention it to Helen. Sensing your concern, she starts giving you a pep talk. You're silly to sit there and worry about it. Of course you passed your tests, and you know your grades have been good. Now snap out of it and get back to work. What a gal. When you first came here, she wasn't too enthused about your becoming a test pilot. Now she's pulling for you. You have changed, haven't you, Helen? You, too, have learned a few things from flight test school. You know now that the more experience a pilot has in the air, and the better he knows his airplane, the safer he will be. You also realize the great contribution that Roy, as a test pilot, can make to our future pilots. Helen's confidence makes you feel better, and you forget your concern. At 0800 the next morning, you knock on the commandant's door. You're relieved when he greets you cordially. Then comes what you'd rather hear than anything else right now. He tells you that barring any unforeseen circumstances, you'll graduate with flying colors. Next, he asks if you've given any thought as to where you would like to be assigned and what sort of job you would prefer on leaving the school. You tell him your first choice is to remain at Edwards in flight test work. Of course, you name 2 alternatives. A little later, Roy, in saying goodbye to the commandant, you tell him you have a buddy who is anxious to apply for the school, but is in a critical job and has no immediate replacement. What should he do? The commandant tells you to have your friend apply anyway. According to Air Force Regulation 53-19, all applications must be forwarded even though disapproved. You thank him for his advice. He shakes hands and tells you, drop in anytime. Let me know how you're making out. And among the last few tests you've got to learn is the spin test. And early next morning, your instructor takes you up to demonstrate. The purpose of this test is to teach the various spin recovery techniques. And show you under what conditions each one is best utilized.
Departure. Okay, flipping over, slightly S there. Okay, going inverted, looking at about 60, 65 knots going down. There's 3. There's a hack and another hack, and the EGT is in. Okay, I got the aircraft. I have the aircraft. Okay, I have the aircraft.
Graduation day. For you and your classmates, Roy, this is one of your proudest moments. You've upheld the fine traditions of the school, mastered a challenging course, and attained your goal. At last, you're a flight test pilot. And it's a proud moment for you, Helen. There's not only the satisfaction of seeing Roy make good, there's also the knowledge that now he's in a position to do his country a great service, as well as to contribute much to the future pilots of the nation. Now belong to one of the best informed, most highly trained group of men in the aeronautical world, the United States Air Force flight test pilots. The men who, in search of truth, will be the first to fly the airplanes of tomorrow.